Yes, everyday carry. SHTF. Gear. Patriot Prepper. Alright everyone, this is SITREP, Episode 1, January 8th, 2026. Situational Report. No rumors, no panic, no speculation dressed up as news. What you're about to hear is verified information, why it matters beyond the headlines, what could reasonably come next, and what it means for people who prepare before the system strains or breaks. This brief is not meant to scare you. It's meant to keep you ahead of the curve. Let's get into it. First thing I want to talk about is the United States discussing options to acquire Greenland. Here is what we know. The United States government has openly discussed options to acquire Greenland, including options that go beyond economic or diplomatic means. These discussions have been publicly acknowledged by senior U.S. officials and reinforced by statements from the president himself. Greenland remains an autonomous territory under the Kingdom of Denmark. Both the Danish government and Greenland's leadership have clearly and formally rejected the transfer of their sovereignty. There is no agreement, no deal, no transfer. This is not an active operation. It is a strategic discussion, right? The United States already maintains a permanently military presence on Greenland through their space base, right? That base plays a critical role in missile warning systems, space surveillance, and Arctic defense. The U.S. officials have repeatedly emphasized Greenland's importance because of its location, its role in early warning infrastructure, and its proximity to emerging Arctic shipping routes as the ice continues to recede. So why does this matter? It goes beyond land ownership. The Arctic is no longer a distant or frozen afterthought. It's becoming a contested zone. Russia has expanded its military footprint across the Arctic. China has declared itself a near-Arctic power. Control of this region affects missile defense timelines, undersea communication cables, rare earth mineral access, and future energy extraction. When the U.S. leadership talks about Greenland in military terms, it signals that the Arctic competition is no longer theoretical, it's active. So what could follow follows a long range, right? At the lower end, this could remain a strategic messaging paired with maybe increased U.S. investment and military reinforcement under existing agreements, right? Now, in the middle range, NATO's unity is tested and allies react to unilateral language involving the sovereignty, right? And at the higher end, long-term tensions accelerate, right? Arctic militarization and deepening great power rivalry, right, between the Russians, Chinese, and then us, right? This doesn't mean war is imminent, right? But what this does confirm is long-term positioning is already underway. What this means for preppers is simple, right? Great power competition rarely hits civilians through breaking news alerts, right? It hits through fuel costs, shipping delays, and unstable supply chains. Arctic competition directly affects energy prices, trade routes, and long-term economic pressure. Preparedness here means understanding that geopolitical shifts always show up in our daily lives before they show up as a conflict. Fuel, food, manufactured goods become more expensive and less predictable long-term before anything explodes. Next, I want to talk about Venezuela oil transfer to the United States. Here's what we know. President Trump publicly stated that Venezuela will turn over approximately 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. This announcement followed continued U.S. pressure on Venezuela's leadership and ongoing sanctions enforcement. According to the statement, the oil would come under the U.S. control rather than being exchanged through a traditional commercial sale, right? This was said directly by the president. It is not rumor or media interpretation. Why this matters is crucial. So, Venezuela holds some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, yet its production has been crippled by sanctions, infrastructure collapse, and political instability. When oil moves due to geopolitical pressure instead of market forces, this disrupts pricing, alters supply expectations, and sends a clear global message: energy remains a weapon of state power. What could follow depends on how the market responds. At the low end, this additional supply could temporarily relieve pressure, especially for United States refineries designed to process this heavy crude. In the middle range, other oil producing nations adjust their output to produce pricing and influence. And then at the higher end, energy realignment triggers retaliation, shipping complications, and tightening controls elsewhere. Energy markets rarely stay calm when politics override economics. So, what this means for preppers is straightforward. Energy stability is never guaranteed. Fuel shortages do not require war, or only disruptions, really. Short periods of relief are just that, short. Preparedness means using calm periods wisely. Keep your fuel reserves topped off. Ensure backup power is functional. Reduce reliance on the system that fails quickly when pressure hits. That isn't panic, that's resilience. Now, Russia escorting oil tankers pursued by the United States. This is what we know. The United States has pursued and seized oil tankers linked to sanctioned entities, right, including vessels connected to Venezuela and Russia operations. In response, Russia had deployed naval assets to escort tankers operating under its flag. Now, this vessel I'm talking about, this vessel tried to disguise itself as a Russian tanker after it had broke through one of the American blockades. It was seized yesterday. These actions have been publicly acknowledged by both sides. The United States maintains that it is and will enforce lawful sanctions. Now, Russia condemns the actions as violations of maritime norm, right? So why this matters, it isn't just about ships alone. Sanctions are no longer passive financial tools. They are now being enforced with military presence. When warships back trade policy, the distance between economic pressure and armed confrontations shrink very fast. Naval environments offer very little margin for error. History has shown that escalations often come not from intent, but miscalculation. What could follow exists with a known range. At the low end, this remains a controlled standoff with escorts and seizures continuing without direct confrontation. Now, in the middle range, increased naval presence raises insurance costs, slows shipping, and disrupts energy transport. At the high end, an incident at sea, accidental or otherwise. This forces rapid diplomatic escalations. Naval confrontations escalate faster than almost any other domain. What this means for preppers is practical. The global economy floats. Literally, when shipping tightens, shelves thin quickly, prices rise slowly, availability drops without warning. Preparedness here means depth, more food on hand, fewer just-in-time dependencies, understanding that supply problems rarely announce themselves with sirens. All right, the next thing I want to talk about, Iran protest and the U.S. warning of intervention. Here's what we know. Protests across Iran has resulted in at least 36 confirmed deaths, with thousands detained as unrest spreads across multiple cities. Independent human rights organizations have verified fatalities and that the use of force by Iranian security services. In response, Iran has restricted or shut down internet access in many cities where protests are occurring. these actions are confirmed. The United States has publicly stated that they are monitoring the situation closely and has warned that widespread violence against civilians will not be ignored. These warnings have been issued openly by U.S. officials. So why this matters goes beyond Iran itself. See, Iran sits in the middle of Eastern power dynamics, right? Internal instability weakens outwards influences, but often increases the risk of external escalations as leadership seek to redirect pressure. History has shown that regimes under threat frequently look outward. Combine this with the U.S. warnings, the risk of miscalculation increases dramatically. What could follow spans a wide range. At the low end, unrest continues and repression intensifies. In the middle range, sustained protests deepen economic collapse and international isolation. And then the high end, escalation crosses a threshold that draws external involvement, directly or through proxy conflict. But that outcome is not guaranteed, but it is no longer unthinkable. What this means for preppers, it's not about immediate war. Middle Eastern instability almost always shows up first through fuel prices, inflation, economic stress. Preparedness here is about bracing for financial pressure, not expecting bombs tomorrow. All right, so before closing out this report, something needs to be addressed. Despite the limited mainstream coverage, the threat of attacks on U.S. soil remains real. The border remained unsecure for years, and individuals with malicious intent entered our country. Some are embedded within our daily lives, right? School, hospitals, stores, waiting for direction or opportunity. This is not said to provoke fear. It is said to reinforce awareness. Most attacks succeed not because people are weak, but because they are distracted, predictable, and unprepared. Awareness doesn't mean panic. It means paying attention, knowing your exits, watching behavior, not appearances. Trust instincts without dramatics. Vary routes when possible, limiting oversharing online. Teach family members situational awareness without paranoia. Preparedness also means planning ahead. Simple communication plans, clear rally points, agreed upon actions if we're separated. Understanding suspicious behavior, maybe probing security, abandoned items, unusual surveillance, and reporting these concerns instead of confronting them. Prepared people stay calm. Calm people make better decisions. This SITREP is not about fear. It is about recognizing pressure. Across Greenland, Venezuela, international waters, Iran, and within our own borders, the pattern is consistent. Power is being asserted under strain. Economic tools are being enforced with force. Energy is being weaponized. Instability is no longer isolated. This does not mean collapse tomorrow. What this does mean is something is heading our way. Prepared individuals do not wait for confirmation. They position early, quietly, and deliberately. This has been SITREP, Episode 1, January 8th, 2026. Stay grounded, stay alert, stay prepared. Patriot Prepper out.